Thundercats roar.
Yeah. They knew a little bit.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST, or it could be, Jamais. It could be your show.
Jamie's cast.
I'm still debating how I'm going to pull this one off.
Web comics reviews and interviews. Well, what I often do is when there's something weird happening, I just record a separate bit and put it in there, and you can play around like that. So I'll continue with the Drunk Duck format. So we have Jamais here, Jamais Jochim.
Yep.
From Webcomics Reviews and Interviews, which is a webcomic podcast about the webcomic world, all aspects of it. We have, of course, and the usual contributors, Tant Serene and Baines. Hi, guys.
Hi. The ones that we take for granted.
Yes, exactly. And before we get into anything, I have to introduce the featured comic. So, QUACKCAST, we'll be talking about the featured comic here.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is Speaking in Tongues by Quinn O'Maddock, and it is rated T for teen. In this nouveau religious retelling of a time when demons rise and destruct, a group of bow and sword-wielding heroes confront a wicked creature that possibly came from the other side. After one of the members is marked, a steady recovery and a pot of soup proves her wounds were not that deep. After numerous heretic marks start appearing around the city, it is up to the group of knights and religious folks to get to the bottom of their cause. The line art is hand-drawn on paper and rendered in black and white. You do not need to know how to speak in tongues in order to read Speaking in Tongues by Quinn O'Maddock, rated T.
And that was QUACKCAST talking about her featured comic this week, which was Speaking in Tongues. Okay, so next up we have the featured music by Gumwallis, and that is Breached, and I would describe it as sounding like a mix of taiko drumming and creepy scene-setting theremin tones. This tune sets quite a mood of isolation and anticipation. It brings to mind the grey, foggy twilight world of the Tenebrae, isolated, lonely, and dangerous. So take it away, Gumwallis, with Breached. And that was our featured music. It was Breached by Rathbone. Okay, thanks for that, Gummels. All right, so, Jamais, your webcomic reviews and interviews is your podcast, and there's two versions. So this is the 2.0. This is the Phoenix. This is the revitalized version.
Yes.
Pretty much.
But I will stop you was because this is what we said to the patrons. So they should be special and not know the origins of the podcast.
You're being elite here. Okay, yeah, and if you're
I'm
not
being
in
very
if you're not in the Patreon elite, then you can't know the secrets.
yes.
All right. So, all right. You approach the webcomic world from a 360 perspective. So you approach just every kind of aspect. We try and do that in the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST. We talked about copyright last week and all that kind of stuff. But you go in a bit deeper, don't you? So you actually would interview copyright lawyers and
Gordon Firemark.
Oh wow. Really? Jeez.
In fact, he's the second one.
Oh wow. That's amazing. So we didn't actually even think to do that. We're just super lazy. We just talk about what we know. That's it.
Well, like you said, the idea is to just basically have a little bit of fun with it. I mean, like you said, point out, there's a lot of people who tend to do pretty much just the Illustrator part stuff, which is fine. It's just, but there's a whole lot of information available on that. They tend to ignore that. Not only is there a lot of writing that goes on for webcomics, but there's also a lot of the business aspect on there as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, what you were telling us in the Patreon video was that people tend to focus on illustrators, so you're going like not only the writing but all the other aspects as well. I think for us, what we did was we kind of because we're on like 446 now, so we exhausted all the easy stuff of illustration and just okay, what else?
But I mean, yeah, like when it's not a video podcast, like you were saying on Patreon, it's kind of tough to talk about illustration really when you're not really showing, stuff, you know. Yeah, and after our 5th episode on antiheroes, I think.
Ouch.
I might be exaggerating there. But,
I don't think you are.
No, it's not.
And this is how Venom goes to the bathroom.
Exactly.
Oh,
we also tend to be crotchety old school people that don't like anything new, except when we do. Yes, but usually what is being done here is a commentary on stuff and some advice on writing as well. We do that because I basically hijack everything Oz tries to say, and I'm a writer, so mostly I'm a writer.
Right.
So there's that also.
Yeah, I try to keep the writing, and I'm realizing that Inktober starts in just a couple of days. Yay.
Oh, Inktober, yeah, that's when you try and write as many words as you can, or something like that.
Nope, that's Nano.
Okay.
That's November.
That's November, yeah.
Inktober, on the other hand, is when you try to do an ink drawing every day.
Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, wow, are you going to actually do that?
Have you ever tried that? Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I always try to compete in that one just to be obnoxious. So, just to show you just why I'm a writer, not an illustrator. Here's my 17th cross.
I've never even tried. I just, no. Bugger that project. All the art stuff, I'm an artist by trade, but yeah, it's just too much work.
Right?
It's all too much work.
And so, do you have some webcomics out there right now that you've written or drawn? If you do any drawing,
the closest you'll be able to find if you really dig for it is over on Spider Forest. I do have a couple of pages for Sex Percussions. Plus, I'm going to get my own site back up, which actually has a complete comic. which is like all of 60 pages or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right. So what's your own complete comic?
Sex Percussions.
Oh, right. It's the same thing. You've only got a few pages on the other thing.
Sex Percussions was one of those. Somebody came up with a name they had to see as a webcomic. I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. Did a quick story for it and said, hey, I'm stealing the name.
Sex Percussions. Oh my god!
Ended up being the name of a group of traveling mages.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh.
But the basic thrust was that there was a murder mystery going on. You had a shaman and his pet hermetic mage that were trying to solve a murder mystery. And then they had to team up with some elemental mages.
Okay.
And I basically have had it to the point where I'm getting tired of the basic, 4 or 5 elements everybody uses. So I basically said, screw it. Okay, great. I'll have one person who does, the element of air just to be traditional. Then I'm going to have another person who's the element of surprise. And then just to be totally obnoxious, the element of construction.
All right. Oh, okay.
How would you have the element of construction?
I'm sorry?
How did you manifest, let's say, the element of construction?
Basically, it was a guy who could build things, stick anything apart, and tear anything down, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
All right, cool.
That's awesome. That's a rather creative approach. Who's the artist? Do you do the drawing, or do you have another artist to do that?
I want to say, when it was bored, because again, this was almost a decade ago, just to show I could actually pull it off, was I think with Katie Sweet.
Oh.
Or Katie somebody, who at least did the Wathler comic.
Okay.
Juathur.
Okay.
So.
And we had a bit of go on. Sorry.
Oh, no, she was a big thing. It was just basically a group of mages who had a big thing for tattoos, basically.
We had a bit of confusion about the name. So it's SEX precautions or precursions?
Percussions, like the drums.
Percussion.
That's what I thought you said. Percussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right. And the sex part, does that refer to sex or like six or something like that, is it?
One, yes, it is sex. Yes, it is sex percussions. And no, there is some sex in the comic, and we had a little bit of fun with that.
All right.
So would you call it foreplay or something?
No, we had it the morning after. Two guys basically come in. One of them has a big, huge bottle of alcohol. They drink it. They get wasted. We cut to the morning after. They're coming out. They're in bed together.
Okay.
Oh, jeez, it's an interesting way of doing it. Well, I didn't.
It was worth it. It was worth it just for their facial expressions.
Drawing expressions is so much fun. It's so much fun. I didn't expect you to be an actual webcomic, huh? Oh, this is interesting.
Sorry about that.
As well as doing the webcomic interviews. Now, what I wanted to ask you about is, how do you go about promoting your podcast?
Right now, it's pretty simple. I've got 2 different versions of it. There's one guy who's actually supposed to be doing the marketing, but all he does pretty much, as far as I can tell, is he lets me host a comic on his site, and he does a feature presence on his website, which is sort of like a online radio type of thing, K4HD.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the so-called live version of the podcast goes every Thursday night. Within about 24 to 48 hours after that, it goes live on iHeartRadio, and then I promote that all over the place on Twitter and Facebook.
All right.
However, now I've managed to acquire an RSS feed. So I'm actually going through and taking advantage of that, and I'm on a lot of different podcast places, like iTunes, for example.
Yeah. Because you can share your RSS feed to to all these kind of things at Google and
Plus, the advantage of doing the interviews and the reviews is that I can get my name on those sites as well, at least once.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
wow. Yeah. Interviews are really, really good for that kind of stuff. Yeah, or when you do reviews.
And so are the reviews. Especially, I can do just do a real quick, you've been interviewed, you did good, here's a link to the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's such a good idea. Well, we sort of do that in that Gummalist does the musical themes to various comics, but they're only on Drunk Duck, and we send people the links to them. So but that doesn't really give us very much. But still, yeah, that's an interesting idea. We should do some more interviews, guys.
On top of that, I've also got a YouTube channel where the audiogram version of the podcast is. Plus, I have a tips and tricks thing that's also much shorter audiogram. Basically, is on YouTube as well, and I can promote that as well, which of course leads back to the podcast.
And you promote them all individually when they go up.
Yep.
Wow. For me, it's just too much work. I just promote one and let them all do their own thing.
Well, I think I've got down to a system where it takes me like about 10, 15 minutes to do now.
For all of them?
I'm only doing one podcast at a time per week.
Oh. Okay.
Basically, I'm only doing basically, this is what the podcast this week's all about, and here's a link to it, and putting it out on about 8 or 10 different places on Facebook.
Yeah.
Plus Twitter.
That
plus
takes
YouTube.
You 10 or 15 minutes just to do all those the different in the different places. Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot simpler than it looks. I mean, I know you're hearing, oh my gosh, he has to write all that all the time, but I just have to basically have a basic summary of what's going on, which I've already got because I have to submit a synopsis of the podcast anyway. So I take that, and to basically thwart Facebook's anti-spamming algorithm, I change the synopsis up a little bit every time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the only catch I've got so basically all I'm doing is taking the synopsis, throwing a link to the podcast at the bottom, copying that, pasting it, changing it a little bit, and moving on to the next what's it called? A little bit of Facebook pages.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and then the Twitter and all those other things. Oh, wow.
And basically the cool thing is, like you pointed out, is that because there's a 24-hour thing, basically my pattern right now is that I basically give the iHeart a free 24-hour pass all by its lonesome, and then I basically launch it on all to the other podcast areas.
Yeah. All right. So staggered around the place. Oh, that's good.
Yep.
That works well. Yeah, I just cannot mentally keep track of all the different places it goes. iHeartRadio, Spotify, LinkedIn.
Well, first off, I get lucky, and most of that's covered because I use Spreaker. So anything that happens on Spreaker, once it pops up on Spreaker, it pops up everywhere, all the other podcast areas.
Right.
So at that point, it's just a matter of going through and actually manually doing the Facebook stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. All right. So that's the only one you really have to link back to things again. You don't go through all the other stuff
and the only time it gets really fun is when I'm doing reviews. Yeah.
Oh, how come?
Because what happens is Facebook will take the first link that pops up and use that as the page it links to.
Oh, yeah.
And I keep forgetting to allow for that. So what I have to do is basically put the problem is normally when I cut and paste all this, I'm doing the synopsis first and then the link to the podcast.
Yep.
The problem is if I'm doing this in Facebook and I've got all those other links, I have to do it before the synopsis.
Exactly.
So there's a little bit of mental gymnastics in there.
Yeah, it's linking to the bloody webcomic or whatever instead of the interview.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing the reviews of, like, how do you review a comic? What is your method?
I have a method? Whoa. Sorry.
I don't know, maybe.
Basically what I do is when I'm looking for the webcomics you do, I basically have 3 criteria. I do one that's basically there, just one that's pretty much totally random. One that I hate doing the diversity thing, but I want one that's like just that represent, keep things diverse in there. And then just because of the people I hang out with, I always try to make sure there's something keyed towards the gay or lesbian crowd.
Okay.
So basically, as long as it meets those 3 criteria, I pretty much, I know that sounds sort of weird, but once it meets those 3 criteria, then it's pretty much, I'll look at the top 10 100, and I'll purposely avoid the top 50 because I figured everybody knows who the top 20 or 30 webcomics are. It's more interesting to go like 50 or 60, you know what I mean?
Oh, right. So it's still popular, but yeah, it doesn't, not in need of extra promotion and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So basically,
hello, birdie.
You guys have a duck. I have a parakeet. That's Rodan. She graces a lot of my podcast for some reason. Yes, there's a reason I'm looking up above me.
She has to make her voice heard as a proper.
Oh, yeah.
I was listening to your diversity in comics thing, and every few seconds there was like this sound, and it sounded like someone opening a bottle of, a fizzy drink. And then I realized you can't be constantly doing that. There's something else going on there, and then it's a bird. Yeah, in fact, a lot of the podcasts I point out right off the bat that occasionally you may hear a bird pop up. So, your not so silent partner. Yeah. How cute. I've tried to edit her out a couple of times, but it doesn't work out as well as you'd think. No. Often they time it so their squawking is in the middle of speech, so it's impossible. Yeah, I've tried it myself. What do you... So that's... Oh, go on. Go ahead. I was just going to ask, what is your your audio program? How do you record and edit? Keep on basically doing this pretty much for free right now, so I'm basically using Audacity plus the Blue Yeti. Oh, what's the other one? Blue Yeti? Blue Yeti. Oh, Blue Yeti. It's my mic. Oh, right. Okay, that's your recording program. The Blue Yeti is actually the actual microphone itself. Oh, right. Just a sec. See? Oh, that's a pretty microphone. Awesome. Yep. And like I said, I'm using basically Audacity for the rest of it. The only catch is that if I'm doing an interview, then I'm using either Skype or Zoom. And if I'm using Skype, I'm also using a program called MP3 Skype Recorder, which is an absolute incredible little program. Oh, is it free? It's free. It's also, but you can get a little bit more functionality for paying another $10. Right. Okay. But the cool thing is about it is that it basically will take the Skype conversation and puts everybody onto their own track. Yeah. So if I'm having a problem, with, you have no idea. If I'm having a problem with somebody else on a different track, I don't have to worry about my stuff. I just have to focus in on their problems. Right. Mm-hmm. So you can very easily remove noise and all that kind of stuff without muting everything. Relatively easily. We won't talk about the time when I had to deal with a person who was in a hotel room right next to an aircraft, to an airport. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah, constant hums and all that kind of stuff. Well, we've had some interesting things we've had to get off. Birds from various places, alarms, weird car noises, Tanz's mum.
And I also have usually vocal cat. Thankfully, he's asleep right now. So,
yeah, my other issue is occasionally, especially during the summer, is the fan.
Oh yeah. I have to turn my fan off when it's summer, and we're recording. I just sweat and die.
So that's why it's time is so I'm right at the beginning of the air conditioning cycle.
Oh right. Oh, what's it like at the moment? Is it hot?
At the moment, actually, we're in the cool down period. We're hitting nice fall weather, which means we're dealing with like 80 and 90s.
Okay.
Versus 100. This is, keep in mind, we're in the tip of the Sacramento Valley, so we can literally cook stuff outside if we really want to during the summer.
Yeah. All right. So that's where you are in California, near the capital, the state capital. Is that right?
Yeah, about an hour and a half north, actually.
I've been to California. I've been to LA and San Diego, and Anaheim, but yeah, not the capital. I did not get there, unfortunately.
Yeah, the nearest tourist thing next to us is the Oroville Dam.
Oh.
Which is like at one point was the biggest earth-filled dam on the planet.
And it's not named after Orville. Oh, that's I was thinking of
it's named after the actual no, it's named after the city that it happens to be right next to.
There's a city called Orville?
Yes, there is.
Oh my god!
Turns out it's actually relatively common.
Oh, really? In America, maybe.
Well, the catch is that there's a lot of keep in mind California has a big thing with the gold rush.
Yeah.
And so you've got a lot of cities that are named to have something either to do with gold or that deal with citrus, which also happens to be a golden color.
Oh.
I sort of point that out because in Orville, even though it was at one point a major gold town, a lot of the history has to deal with more with the citrus, with orange trees. Yeah. So it got named Oro Gold after the oranges.
Oh my god! I never realized that. Would that be why oranges are called oranges?
Possibly.
All right. Oh my god, that's amazing! I'm gonna have to research that now. That is like a golden bit of.
But the key is that you happen to find a lot of towns named Oroville in California, or at least a couple here and there.
Orville! Oh my god! Okay, I wasn't getting that. I was not getting that. Oh wow!
No.
I thought it was like the dorky name.
Yes, it's that too. We won't talk about Redenbacher. With little red tie.
Orville. Oh god! All right, that is some amazing information. Now I'm gonna use this as trivia to bamboozle and annoy people from now on. Oranges. Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, let's get back to comics again. You have recently interviewed Anubik of Bloodbound. Now, I know him. He started out on Drunk Duck. Anubik. I'm pretty sure, like, the New Zealander? Big New Zealander?
Yep, you can definitely hear it in the accent.
Oh, awesome. So how was he to be interviewed?
He's actually one of the better interviews. He was relaxed, calm, and there was a lot of fun had in that particular interview.
Okay. In what way?
General rule is that when people do their first interview, you can tell because they tend to keep everything short, bare minimum of information, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that means, which I hate because that means I have to ask a lot more questions.
You have to do all the work.
Yeah. This guy, on the other hand, the big problem was shutting him up. Which I have no problem with whatsoever.
Now, you've got to interview Tant Serene. That'll be...
So I think I only had to ask him, what was it? Maybe 6 or 7 questions?
Whoa!
All right.
So he's very good at promoting himself. Well,
Oh no, we just had a lot of fun in the conversation. I mean, that's
okay.
the best interviews tend to be the best conversations as well. I mean, you happen to be very informational and that sort of thing, but the key is that the people who are trying to, listen to the interview are trying to get as much information about whoever you're being interviewed as possible.
Yeah.
They can find all the hardcore stuff about the comic book or the whatever on their own. That's, it's just a matter of basically having a link to the comics. They're good to go.
Yeah.
Especially if they've done an actually good job of the comic. The people that have their archives, they have the cast lists, who have their, histories of what's going on in the comic. You can, if they've done their job well, then it's just a matter of sending them off to the comic and they're good to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's a good
the
point,
interview
too.
itself, you actually want to have a nice long conversation with them so the people who are listening get to be introduced to the person, so that the way they become a lot more familiar with the person. Therefore, they have an emotional link to the comic. It's not just something they read. It's all of a sudden they know who's the person behind that. So,
oh, interesting. Sounds like I have to listen to a few more of your interviews and things like that to learn the techniques.
it's just basically said. So most of these just having a conversation about the comic and then, not being afraid to go afield.
Yeah.
And trust me, some of the interviews definitely go afield.
Okay.
Jeez. I've actually had to load up Sherpa because of some of the interviews. So.
We find ourselves always going back to Star Wars and Game of Thrones as our examples for everything.
Well, it's they are both such perfect train wrecks that you can see both the things that they did right and the things that they did wrong in one perfect sequence. It's like it's beautiful.
We won't talk about my Games of Thrones breakdown.
Yes, you have a whole show on that.
I had fun. I mentioned I do critical reviews. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are not too critical when we talk about webcomics, but pop culture we do. We get the knives out for pop culture. Because we figure that, if there's like money behind it and promotion and stuff, then it's game. But if it's someone's passion project that someone worked on, then no, generally.
That's always the part I have problems with doing the reviews, because I try to make the reviews as fair as I possibly can. Yeah, I'm actually going at it and actually saying, this is the good points, this is the bad points, this is why you should go there, type of deal. And it's always fun, especially when there have been a couple of comics I've absolutely refused to review because they were just so bloody horrible. I mean, geez. We're talking like MS Paint was the art program, and they barely knew how to use that.
Yeah.
You know that philosophical cartoon that's all about the dinosaurs? Yeah, they couldn't even manage to put that kind of thing together.
Oh, right.
And we're talking we're talking comics that had plot holes that were so big that basically you could take the entire Imperial fleet and just go for it. And we won't even talk about the characterization is so totally cliche, but those are the comics I tend to avoid. I even have a limitation of like at least 50. I usually keep to a 50-page minimum, even though I've had exceptions for that one.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
That's interesting.
But that's because the comic was just so cute. I mean, I hate allowing for that kind of exception, but it's just there's a lot of cuteness there. There was it was just starting out, and it looked like there was a lot of really good stuff, a lot of good potential there.
Okay.
So I'm like, hey, this has got to have a little bit of promotion to it.
Yeah, give them a boost. Yeah.
So.
Oh, we have this thing on Drunk Talk. It's our featured comic, so we do that every week, and we have a minimum of 15 pages. So we can give a boost to comics that are just starting out, as well as things that are, have been going on for a long time. But we tend to avoid ones that are, 400, 500 pages, just because it's too hard to do that every week to read through hundreds of pages.
We won't talk about Misfile. Misfile, great comic, and they just wrapped up after I think it was 15 years.
Okay.
And these guys are already setting up a sequel for it. But I trying to point that out because there's a ridiculous, almost a couple thousand pages of material on that one.
Right.
Oh, like used books, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long one. Do you have things that you won't cover? I mean, you've already told us about the under 50 pages or plot holes or bad art, but pornographic work or really violent work, stuff like that you wouldn't.
If it's straight, I try to keep. The problem is the podcast has a PG. I try to keep it to a solid PG-13 or PG rating on it. So basically, that means that I probably will. I'll probably do. I'm trying to hedge here. But yeah, I'll probably avoid the hardcore porn or the ultra violent type comics. I mean, yeah, Conan, that kind of thing, fine. But once he starts getting into, would this make a great show for Cinemax? Yeah, that's when I start trying to avoid it.
All right. Oh, I don't know. Bloodbound's got a bit of nudity.
Nudity's fine. A little bit of sex is fine. Some violence is fine. Bloodbound in that regard is actually a pretty good comic.
Yeah.
But it's also probably towards the upper limit. I mean, when I start looking at sex I'll avoid, I'm talking Milo Manara is somebody I probably would never do any.
Okay. So mostly you would say if it's bordering or going into the area of exploitative. Gratuitous.
I'm really hard going into exploitive because the catch here is that I appreciate that there's some areas where you start hitting when you start hitting straight porn when it actually does get exploitive. And I'm a big fan of teen sex comedies, so, but the key is that basically there's a catch where there is a point where you basically have to do that kind of rating, that kind of material in order to make the point. Robert Crumb, for example, is a perfect example. He would definitely be something I wouldn't touch, but that's not because he's exploitive. In fact, he's just the exact opposite of that. Right. We're talking some hardcore sex. We're talking the occasional violence, and we're definitely talking some interesting blue material. Robert Crumb did not hold back by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But, that's what I'm sort of hesitant to say exploitative because I appreciate that there are some comics that go towards the exploitive side and actually have a little bit of fun with it. Girl Genius, for example, has a little bit of fun with it. We won't talk about Agatha's enhancements. But if you've ever seen Girl Genius, you know what I'm talking about.
Great artist. Love him.
Oh, yeah, Bill Folio is incredible. Oh, wait, that's Catra. But anyway, the basic point is that there is a point where the person's having fun with it, but then there's a point where it's just simply, I'm doing this just for the sake of having, the obvious physical attributes out on display. At that point, I'll probably go, no, I'll try to avoid doing straight exploitation type stuff. But that's just because it's just not fun for me.
Yeah, it's just not as interesting, and plus it's totally visual, isn't it? So there's not really much that it offers a podcast. Oh no!
When I start doing the podcast, like you said, when I start doing the webcomics, in fact, one of the 3 rating systems I use is basically there actually is an art rating for it. We'll actually go through and go hardcore on what's good and what's bad about the art style.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And of course, there's also writing, and there's also, because it is a webcomic, there's also web design.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because you've got the 360 approach there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it very tricky to go through a lot of websites and stuff like that for comics because most of them are just so badly done.
We won't talk about webtoons.
Oh, not a fan.
One of those catch-22s though. I love the comics, hate the website.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's basically, remember what I'm looking for when I'm probably looking at the website, and I'm going to make fun, no offense, but I have to make fun of, I'm going to make fun of Drunk Duck here just to a certain degree.
Okay.
Is that you basically have when it comes down to it, a lot of people who do their web design who basically are just there to put the webcomic out and that's it. When we start looking at webtoons, yeah, they're pretty much just there to put the webcomic out and that's it. I mean, you have a couple of people who do a little bit of a cast list and they do a little bit of a about the comic type of deal, but they don't go into any actual depth on it usually. They just put out the comic and you've got an archive and that's it.
Yeah.
So Drunk Dunk is actually usually about a step, is almost like 2 steps above that on average. You have a lot of people who actually do put a little bit of care into it, try to make sure that the directional buttons at the bottom or wherever are actually there. They try to put a little bit of care into making sure that people actually know who the cast is, and so on and so forth. So Drunk Duck actually doesn't do bad. I think you guys usually average like about 3 or 4 on the 1 to 5 scale. Webtoons usually does about a 2.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's clean. It's professional looking, but it's
minimal.
Beige.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Spartan.
Right.
Beige.
Beige, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think they've gone too far into the phone. They want to have everything like optimized for phones, and then but it's the old idea of having stuff optimized for phones. It's like back when phones couldn't do much. It's just there's nothing there. So now phones are way more. The screens are bigger. There's higher resolution. You can have all the fancy stuff, but they're going nah. It's got to be minimal. Got to be nothing there. It'll be this scrolling stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, I just got into a major fight regarding webtoons recently. Just last night, in fact.
Oh, really?
So, the problem is that basically a person sort of forgot that webtoons actually has a background to it as a word.
Oh.
So it goes all the way back to the 90s.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it does. Used to be, that was basically, you remember, now I can't remember the name. You remember Bob the Squirrel?
No.
1, you need to look him up. 2, basically when they did the original webtoons, it was basically used for just the real basic GIFs. Well, a little bit more advanced GIFs, but frog in a blender type of deal. Yes, I mean literally, there was a cute little QuickTime thing. You could actually do a frog in a blender, and we won't talk about the hamster in a microwave. But the fun part is that you actually had some people doing some back in when the internet was just getting them. Actually, did put out some really quick interactive cartoons for the web. And you also had it also became sort of a slang term for webcomics as well. Oh. They just didn't have a term for webcomics when they first began, so they used webcomics and webtoons interchangeably at that point.
Yeah. Did not know.
So,
okay, so when did they become a comic host? Because I only became aware of them as a webcomic host just a couple of years ago, really.
Yeah, I think they've only been around for a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I have yet to see any of their comics that I've done pretty much a random search more than like, what was it? I think you've seen like 200 pages or something like that.
Oh, yeah, in the history. Well, Drunk Duck's been around since 2002, I believe. So we had...
Oh, yeah. Trust me. I know.
Host. Oh, really? You saw the early days of it, did you?
Yes, I did.
Oh, wow. So, from what I remember, there was us and Keen Space. That were the 2 ones. And I don't know if there were any other hosts back then. Free hosts.
There were a couple other hosts, but they weren't big ones. They were just basically itty-bitty type of things.
Okay.
I mean, you basically had like Spider Forest. I mean, Spider Forest goes back to like the mid-noughts, but I think like 2004, 2005.
Yeah. I think that was an invitation only sort of thing.
Yeah.
For a while.
So you did have a lot of the smaller hosts, but you didn't have any really major ones outside of like Keen Space and Drunk Duck.
Yeah. And then they got it on Keen Space. They the elites on Keen's spot got annoyed that they were associated with the plebs of Keen's space, and they wanted to change the comic genesis. You can't have the same name.
That went over well.
Oh god, yeah, they were such. I'm gonna use a bad word here. They were wankers. They were.
That's perfectly fine because they pretty much were. And I believe they died within 12 months after that.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought they were still around.
They were still around. That's why I'm using the phrase pretty much. I mean, they were.
Oh, okay.
They just weren't They were there. They just weren't a force like they used to be.
Oh, right. Finished them off like the global financial crisis sort of finished Drunk Duck off in a big way.
So.
We lost our funding from our backers. And
Ouch.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. That's what it is. I mean, the whole webcomic hosting world now is a lot more corporate than it used to be. In the old days, you could do it yourself. These days, it's a lot harder to do that. And because to set up a site for, that kind of volume of traffic and people using it is very expensive. So you need big money in order to do that. And Drunk Duck has been set up that way, but isn't maintained that way now. It's maintained just by a community, which means we can't do the constant upgrades and fixes that webtoons and comic. There's two of them, isn't it? There's webtoons and.
Depending on how you want to look at it. My other one I like making fun of every so often is Go Comics.
Oh, I've never heard of Go Comics.
It's not necessarily it's not a true webcomic place. It's more of a place where, these Sundays you read during the newspaper.
Okay.
That's their online version.
Oh.
I mean, you want to talk about corporate.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
I think if basically I go between if I want to see a corporate comic, it'll basically go between webtoons on one end and Go Comics on the other.
Right. I was thinking of Tapastic. I think that was the other one.
Tapas and Tapastic and. Geez, I know I should have known. There's the third one out there, and or a fourth one out there, and I just can't remember what the name of it is. But yeah, okay. But it's sort of interesting that you're not seeing a lot of more individual people. I mean, when they have their own setup for their own URLs and all that, they usually tend to point somewhere else.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. It's a tricky world these days with the webcomic stuff. But you just do reviews of people from everywhere, all over the place. So you don't sort of discriminate in that, or would you prefer to do self-hosted comics?
Pretty much whatever looks interesting. Okay. I mean, I know I tend to use a lot of Drunk Duck, and I also tend to use a lot of Webtoons comics.
Oh, really?
That's one of the reasons I don't like Webtoons. We've got this really cool webcomic. It's got a really incredibly Taiduo is a really great webcomic over on Webtoons. It's sort of got an anime feel, CGI anime feel to it. Basic setup is you've got the futuristic dystopia, 5 different cities, and each one of them you can only have a population that goes so high. So the way they've got it set up is everybody's allowed 2 kids at the beginning, and then around 20 or so, one of the 2 has to go. Okay. So, like I said, it's not a. And like I said, it's got some incredible graphics to it. I mean, it's a CGI type comic, and it's actually somebody had some actual fun with it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, full blown backgrounds. It's not like where you normally see like Dad's 3 type show where it's basically we'll do a few basic people, a really basic background, and that's the comic. We're talking they've actually got really fully developed backgrounds and all that. And plus the writing on it is pretty on calc. One of my major drawbacks when I start doing the dialogue, for example, is you have a lot of people who pretty much everybody speaks the exact same way.
Oh, yeah.
You could actually shift around the word balloons and you couldn't tell if there was a change made.
Right.
Well, So, going back to the way I do the rating system, is basically look at the writing first. Taiju was pretty good because it had a great plot, great characters, great dialogue. You could tell everybody who was different. Just on the writing side, it was absolutely an incredible thing. When I was looking at the art, again, a little put off because it's CGI, but this is somebody who actually went full bore into it. They actually had some serious fun to it. So again, you had we're talking 5 out of 5, and then 5 out of 5 again, and then the web design hit them. And it's webtoons. So you had what should have been a straight 5 out of 5 across the board, all of a sudden go to an overall rating of, what was it, 4? Just because of the web design? 3 or 4 because of the web design?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
the webtoons doesn't do them any favors on there. Okay.
Like you said, it's set up for making it easy for phone users.
Yeah.
So, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, it can. No. Yeah, it sort of can be alienating, and you often do want to find out more about what you're looking at, and especially if you're doing a review, I find the biggest things are trying to easily know the setup and knowing the characters' names, because you can't remember characters' names often. Reading even after like 200 pages or so of reading a comic, you can't remember exactly what the main characters are called. And it's,
that's why I love cast pages.
Oh, they're so good, aren't they? Do cast pages, people. They're such a help.
Oh, you have no idea. Especially when I've got like 37. Especially when I've got these artists who are doing. Everybody is cookie cutter anime. So
yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Who's pink?
All the girls with their hair color or something.
Yeah, the only difference between I had webcomics where the only difference between 27 characters was hairstyle and hair color.
Right.
That was it. We're talking like, hi, I'm a Mortal Kombat fan, and I love the palette swap concept. Oh, screw you.
It's basically a drawn version of a Sprite comic.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Remember Sprite comics? Are they even a thing anymore?
Yes.
Yes and no. You don't see them that often, and when they do, they have a little bit more. They're having a little bit more fun than when they used to.
Or they turn super freaky, so we've got Pregnant Sonic and...
oh, my God.
Super Pregnant Sonic.
I try not to think about Sonic, especially after the last movie. Oh my gosh, that's got to be the first time I've ever been glad they went back to the drawing board on a character.
Oh, is that the live action movie you're talking about?
Oh yeah,
Furry comic. Oh God.
No, we're talking we're talking Jim Carrey as Robotnik.
Oh my lord, that's like Mario Brothers or whatever that movie was. Jeez.
Oh no, we're talking visually. It was a lot worse.
That movie come out? I didn't even know that movie came out, man. Did it? I remember hearing about it.
I don't think it is. Is it?
So
is it out?
Last I heard, they were redoing the CGI for some strange reason.
Right.
Oh, that's the last thing I heard too. Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't work out why they were like making him furry and stuff, just because bloody Pikachu was furry, and that people were raving about Detective Pikachu. It looked crap to me, and it sounded crap, and I'm not interested. But why would you do Sonic in that style? Why? It's Sonic.
Except they had to redesign the character, so.
Oh yeah. It looked like a freak. Well, it's gonna be crap, whatever. So,
yeah.
That's it. We're at about the 54-minute mark, so this is time when we normally wrap up. So you've got your amazing webcomic reviews and interviews that we've got to point people towards. And would you like to ask us anything? Sorry, this has been a bit of a mess.
Well, that's fine. I think we've done pretty well. I mean, we've had fun with it, so that's always a plus.
Yeah. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to remember that orange stuff.
Oh, I have no idea if that actually has any common connection to it or not. It's just, like I said, it's just one of those things we just had a lot of, I'm from Sacramento. I actually spent time there, and we actually have one of the subsections, just like New York. It's cut into different. Yes, Rodan, we know you're here. And one of those sections is actually called Citrus Heights because, well, that's where they did all the oranges.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I have no idea if it actually is because of the gold connection or not, even though that would be clever.
I'm going to say it is because I think lemons were the first thing and they're yellow and yeah, they wanted it more gold. So I'm just going to invent that. I'll edit the Wikipedia page. So it's true. That's the most valuable thing to take away. Well, thank you very much for being on the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST, episode number 446.
All right, thanks for having me.
Oh, all right. All right. See you later, guys. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.